You think they don't care, don't you? You assume their quiet means they've already checked out. But what if the reality is the exact opposite? What if the very behavior that's hurting you right now is actually the clearest sign they've already fallen for you? Let's be honest. Dating someone with avoidant tendencies can feel like emotional whiplash. One moment they're fully present, the next they're pulling away so quickly it makes you question whether the connection was ever real. In those silent stretches, when the texts slow down and affection fades, your mind runs in circles. But here's what most people never explain. Avoidance is not always a signal of indifference. Sometimes it's the most obvious sign of emotional attachment. I'm going to walk you through 6 behaviors that look like distance, coolness, or lack of interest, yet are actually unplanned signals that an avoidant person has already fallen in love with you. So before you chase, before you give up, and before you blame yourself for caring too much, you need to hear this. Stay with me until the last point, because by then, you'll view your entire relationship through a new lens. When you're with an avoidant partner, you'll notice a pattern that feels like they're sabotaging the good parts. Things go well, better than ever. You share an incredible weekend. They look at you like you're the only one in the room. They drop their guard and open up about their history, maybe even tell you things they haven't shared with anyone. You feel the shift. You feel their heart. The moment is real, deep, and meaningful. And then, almost like clockwork, they fade. Messages slow. They stop initiating. Their energy changes, and you're left staring at your phone, drowning in questions. Did I mess up? Were they pretending? How can someone go from so present to so distant in a matter of hours? The confusion is brutal. Here's the hard truth very few people understand. When an avoidant person disappears right after a moment of deep closeness, it's not because they didn't feel what you felt. It's because they did. People with avoidant attachment typically have a nervous system shaped, often in early childhood, to connect emotional closeness with danger. For them, intimacy doesn't feel warm and comforting. It feels risky. It triggers a deep belief that if they get too close, they'll be swallowed up, trapped, or lose themselves. So when you connect deeply, their system flips into alert. They don't consciously think, I must get away from this person. What happens is sneakier and more frustrating. A wave of anxiety hits with no obvious cause. Their body tightens. Thoughts race. An old instinct whispers, run. And that's what they do. Not because they don't care, but because they care more than they know how to manage. To you on the receiving end, this reaction feels like betrayal. You shared something sacred. You felt seen, valued, even loved. Now their distance makes it feel like it was all false. That's the trap. That's your attachment wound interpreting their defense system. What's actually happening is overwhelm. Vulnerability isn't freeing for them. It's destabilizing. When they disappear after closeness, it isn't ghosting in the usual way. It's retreating to the only safe place they trust, solitude. Understand this clearly. Their withdrawal isn't to punish you or manipulate you. It's self-protection. That moment of closeness probably woke something they didn't expect. Maybe they felt love, admiration, or the scary realization that they're getting attached. Because avoidant styles are used to living at a distance from their own feelings, this realization hits like a wave. They don't yet have the tools to sit with it, process it, and keep moving with connection, so they slam the brakes. There's another layer. Their subconscious is constantly scanning for danger. Somewhere in their past, opening up led to pain. Maybe when they shared a feeling with a caregiver, they were dismissed, mocked, or left alone. Maybe their needs were ignored for so long that closeness became linked with disappointment. When you show up consistently and kindly, it challenges the story they trust. It's safer to reject it than to believe in it and risk hurt. Their disappearing act is a reset button, a way to put distance back in so they can calm down, convince themselves they're not too attached, and bring the relationship back to a pace they can tolerate. What makes this painful is that avoidant partners rarely explain any of this. They don't text, "I'm overwhelmed and need some space." That feels too exposed, so they go quiet, hoping the silence gives them time to regulate. For you, silence feels like abandonment. That's when spirals start. You may reach out more, analyze every word, become hyper-alert, or chase them. And by doing that, you unintentionally confirm their fear that closeness equals pressure, suffocation, or a loss of self. It becomes a loop that repeats until one or both of you learn what's really going on under the surface. When they pull away after closeness, it's not your fault. It's not about your beauty, your value, or your worth as a partner. It's about touching a tender place in them they're not ready to face. They love quietly. They process alone. They heal in private. That doesn't mean the connection wasn't real. It means it was so real, it woke something they weren't prepared to feel. Avoidant partners often try to control the pace of the relationship, not because they're cold or playing games, but because closeness sets off an inner alarm they don't fully understand. When feelings get real, when the stakes rise, when the bond becomes undeniable, that's when they tighten the reins. You'll feel the shift instantly. 1 week, things flow. You're spending more time together. Conversations deepen. Then suddenly they say you should take it slow. They talk about needing space or wanting to see where it goes. It feels like whiplash. For someone with avoidant leanings, intimacy without control feels like free-falling, and the way they cope is to grab the brakes. For an avoidant, love rarely arrives as a gentle, easy unfolding. It shows up as intensity that hijacks their system. Vulnerability feels unsafe. So the first move is to regulate the speed. Not because they're not interested, but because they are. That level of emotional investment feels like a threat to their independence and sense of identity. So they limit time together, resist labels, and avoid commitments. A relationship that could be fluid and natural turns into a stop-start rhythm designed to help them breathe. They don't see that micromanaging the pace doesn't just create space for them, it creates uncertainty for you. You sense their hesitation, and your instinct may be to lean in, to reassure them, to close the gap. But each step closer makes them lean out a little more. They experience closeness as something to survive rather than enjoy. If you seek clarity about what this is, they feel pressure. Pressure raises their walls. It's not that you're doing something wrong, it's that they're slipping back into the safety pattern they know: retreat. Let's not rush. I like you, but I don't want labels yet. These lines sound reasonable. Healthy pacing matters. But when pace is used like armor, they're not just moving slow, they're limiting access to their heart. They decide how much love they can tolerate and when. You'll recognize it when progress happens only on their timeline. You want more time together. They're suddenly busy. You raise exclusivity. They dodge labels. You ask where it's going. They answer in fog. This isn't a lack of interest. It's fear of losing control, and for them, losing control feels like losing themselves. Many avoidants grew up in homes where emotions were unsafe, mocked, or ignored. As adults, they control relationships to avoid that old chaos. But love can't be managed like a project. It asks for trust and a little surrender, and that is terrifying for them. The worst part is that their need to control pace destabilizes you. You start wondering if you're too much, decoding mixed signals like it's a full-time job. But their pacing tells you more about their fear than about your worth. They're not pulling back because they want to lose you. They're pulling back because they're already in deep, and that depth wakes old alarms they thought were gone. Their heart may be opening, but their reflex is to keep the door barely cracked. So they set rules, add space, and put guardrails around something that's meant to be open. To them, that feels like love they can handle. If you're dating someone avoidant, it's easy to overlook the small, quiet ways they care. You might expect big declarations, intense vulnerability, or constant reassurance, the usual signals we're taught to see as love. That's not how they operate. They don't love loudly, they love softly through side doors. You won't always get grand words or dramatic displays. Instead, they show up in steady, almost invisible ways that reveal how invested they are. If you don't speak their language, you'll miss it, and you might wrongly conclude they don't care. Avoidants fear needing someone. They learn to prize self-reliance and emotional independence above all. The idea of depending on another person can trigger panic or shame. So when they start to care, when attachment grows, they don't broadcast it. They protect it. They guard it. They express it in safe ways. Action over words, logistics over speeches, consistency over drama. They remember your coffee order. They pick you up when your car won't start. They fix that broken shelf without being asked. Maybe they won't say, "I love you" easily, but they remember the movie you wanted to see and have it ready when you get there. No fireworks, just fingerprints on the steady parts of your daily life. This kind of showing up can feel confusing if you're used to a more expressive style. You might be waiting for "I miss you" while they're quietly prepping to help with your job interview. You may crave a long call while they make sure your favorite snack is always at their place. For them, love means being reliable, helpful, and calm, not needy or overwhelming. Because they fear being too much, they avoid emotional intensity and instead create safety through structure. That's why it's important to stop measuring love by intensity alone. Intensity fades. Drama burns out. Consistency, especially from someone afraid of closeness, is a radical kind of commitment. If an avoidant checks in steadily, even with simple messages like, "How's your day?" or "Text me when you get home," they're opening up the only way they know. When they respond quickly to a need or quietly take care of something for you, they're saying, "I'm here and I notice." It might not come with flowery words, but it carries weight, especially from someone whose instinct is to back away. You'll also see that they don't make many promises, but the ones they make, they keep. They prefer to underpromise and overdeliver rather than say something heavy and fail. When they agree to do something and follow through every time, that's love in action. It's how they prove to you and to themselves that they can show up without losing themselves. This slow, steady presence is trust built brick by brick. Another quiet signal, they let you into their routines. If they invite you into their everyday world, even if it's not romantic, pay attention. Joining them on errands, meeting the trusted people in their life, being shown their creative projects or hobbies, these might seem ordinary, but to someone who protects their inner world, this is intimate. Sharing their time, their rituals, and their personal spaces means they're opening the door behind the mask. That's intimacy for them. Not dramatic speeches, but letting you blend into their real, unfiltered life. To someone with an anxious style, this might feel too quiet or too plain. But when an avoidant folds you into their daily life, shows up in small ways, keeps their word, and responds without you begging, that's their version of being all in. One of the most misunderstood pieces of avoidant attachment is how their anxiety gets mistaken for disinterest. We expect avoidance to look like coldness or silence, but often the most obvious sign they're falling for you is that they look anxious around you, not distant. They get fidgety, inconsistent, a bit awkward. It's easy to read that as boredom. In truth, it's internal chaos. Their brain is in overdrive, their body is tense, their walls are colliding with their heart. Their nervous energy is a sign something real is happening inside, and that scares them. Avoidant people like feeling in control of feelings, space, image, and vulnerability. Closeness threatens all of that. When they start to care, their inner world shakes. They're not only navigating a relationship, they're managing risk. Risk of being seen, of depending, of being hurt. So they act oddly, not because they don't want you, but because they're conflicted. They want connection, but fear what it brings. Their anxiety isn't about you. It reflects their struggle between wanting closeness and needing protection. You'll spot it in the small things. Their eye contact becomes irregular. They say something sincere and then crack a joke to deflect. They seem nervous when plans feel too couple-like, even if they planned them. Sometimes they look annoyed for no obvious reason, because your presence is both calming and overstimulating at once. You wonder, what did I do? It's not about you, it's about the battle with closeness. Emotional intimacy triggers a part of their brain that says, this is unsafe, even when everything is fine. They try to manage the discomfort, but it leaks out as defensiveness, restlessness, or uneven moods. Many avoidants feel this anxiety in their bodies. Their posture shifts around you. They might pull back from touch that used to feel easy. They get tongue-tied in meaningful talks or change the subject when things get too deep. You might see them become short-tempered or distracted, not because they're losing interest, but because their emotional bandwidth is stretched thin. They're trying to stay close and stay distant at the same time. That tug-of-war shows up as visible unease. It's not planned. It's a survival habit rooted in early experiences where closeness meant pain. What's most confusing is that their anxiety can look exactly like rejection. The pullback, the guarded voice, the lack of eye contact, the hesitation about future plans, all of it looks like disinterest. Underneath, those behaviors are often powered by care. The more they like you, the more dysregulated they feel. Their prized independence is being challenged. Their boundaries feel tested. Their sense of self is shifting. That kind of change is messy and full of doubt. So they wobble, they push and pull, they run hot and cold. Not to play games, but because they don't yet know how to stay open without feeling swallowed. If you pay attention, their nervousness is revealing. It says you matter. It shows they're emotionally activated. They might over-explain or try too hard to seem casual. They replay conversations afterward, worrying they were too eager or too aloof. They're not detached, they're hyper-aware. That awareness turns normal moments into emotional minefields. Seeing this pattern helps you stop taking it personally. Their guardedness isn't proof of absence, it's proof of struggle. The inconsistency, the nervous reactions, the distance when emotions rise, all signs of an inner conflict. Under the walls and the quiet is a person feeling more than they can safely show. For someone avoidant, that is both terrifying and significant. Another behavior. When vulnerability rises, they literally look away. Eye contact for them is exposure. When they feel empathy, guilt, affection, or the first sparks of love, they break eye contact. If you don't understand this, you might think they're lying or don't care. Often, their inability to meet your eyes is the most honest moment you'll see. That glance away isn't avoidance of you. It's avoidance of their own vulnerable feelings in real time. Eye contact says, I see you, and you see me. Avoidant people have spent years building defenses, so nobody truly sees their fears, their need for love, or their softness. So when you touch a tender place, maybe you say something kind, ask a deep question, or bring up a loaded topic, the impulse is to look down or away. Not because they want to escape the talk, but because direct gaze feels like too much intimacy too fast. It dissolves boundaries they rely on. You'll see it when conversations get real. You tell them you care, and their eyes drop. They apologize but keep glancing aside. They try to say something hard but can't hold your gaze. These are moments when their guard is thin. Looking away is their way to manage intensity so they don't shut down entirely. Many learned early that being seen emotionally was risky, met with punishment, rejection, or indifference. They concluded emotions are a liability. Eye contact creates instant connection, and for someone who spent years avoiding dependency, it can feel like standing exposed. Physiologically, stress rises, heart rate ticks up, breathing changes, and the brain searches for safety. Breaking eye contact lowers the heat. It helps them stay present without falling apart. That look to the floor or window isn't rejection, it's self-soothing. The more they care, the more this shows up. Ironically, love can make it harder for them to hold your gaze. You might think love will soften and open them more. For avoidance, love increases vulnerability, which increases the urge to protect. So when you say something heartfelt and they glance away, understand. Their body is telling on their heart. To look into your eyes would admit they're affected, that they've let you into a guarded space. For someone trained to be self-sufficient, that is the scariest intimacy. They're not avoiding you, they're avoiding the size of what they feel. Now let's talk about the push-pull that can drive you mad. 1 minute they're close, gentle, attentive, open. Then something shifts. They pull back. They protect their time, their space, their feelings. You adjust to the distance, tell yourself to step back, and then they return. Maybe with a casual text, maybe with full effort, maybe pretending nothing happened. To understand their return, you have to understand the storm that sent them away and the pull that brings them back. Avoidant people are deeply conflicted about love. On the outside, they look calm and independent. Underneath is a sensitive system that can't stay steady with vulnerability for long. Connection feels wonderful until it feels dangerous. It threatens autonomy, invites dependency, and challenges an identity built on "I don't need anyone." So when intimacy deepens, when they feel seen, relied on, or close, they retreat. It's not punishment, it's defense. They step back because closeness wakes an old belief. If you let someone in, they will hurt you, expect too much, or make you lose yourself. But the retreat isn't the end. What confuses partners most is that they come back. A day, a week, a month. They circle around again, not out of boredom, not as a game, because their feelings didn't vanish. What faded was their ability to tolerate those feelings in that moment. They needed space not because they didn't care, but because they cared so much that the exposure was too intense. They disconnect to reset. Once the intensity drops, they resurface. The bond they feared is still there. The attachment they tried to outrun is still tugging. So they come back, not as manipulators, but as people trying to love without drowning. This return is one of the strongest signs you matter. Avoidants don't circle back to just anyone. It's easier to leave simple, shallow connections behind. But when they return to you, it's because something inside can't fully detach. They've tried to logic their way out. They've rehearsed every reason to stay distant. Still, a stronger pull brings them back. Their return is a quiet admission. The bond remains, even if they're not ready to fully surrender to it. They may not explain their leaving or returning. You might get a neutral, "Hey, how have you been?" or "thought of you." No long apology. That doesn't mean it's meaningless. For someone who struggles with emotional openness, reaching out again is a big step. It says they've been thinking, processing, maybe regretting, and wondering if there's still room for them. The tone may be careful or muted, but underneath, the heart is asking, is it safe to try again? You might also notice small changes when they come back. They're a bit more present. They try a little harder to meet your needs, even if imperfectly. They test how much vulnerability they can handle without losing themselves. Growth can be slow and uneven, but it exists. Their return isn't only physical, it's emotional. Even without grand gestures, it's their way of saying, "I'm still here, I'm still connected, I'm still trying to figure this out." For someone afraid of intimacy, re-entering the arena is a quiet kind of courage. Here's the bottom line. Love from an avoidant partner rarely arrives in the usual packaging. You have to read between the lines, not from desperation, but from understanding. They aren't broken, they're scared. When you see what their distance actually means, you stop reacting and start leading with calm strength, boundaries, and self-respect. You don't need to chase, you need to understand. And then you choose, is their style of loving one that honors the way you need to be loved?